We have some more NHL signings to discuss today, including some key restricted free agents for the New York Rangers and Washington Capitals. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now we have some more restricted free agents that have come to terms with their teams on some new contracts. And let's get started with the Washington Capitals agreeing to terms with 25-year-old forward Chandler Stephenson on a one-year contract valued just over $1 million at $1.05 million. Now, Chandler Stephenson has been with the Washington Capitals for some time, but has been a regular in their NHL lineup for the most part over the past 2 years. Played a fairly significant role as a bottom six player during their Stanley Cup win 2 seasons ago. He doesn't really put up a whole lot of points. He's only got 18 points and 11 points over his last 2 years. But he is an effective bottom six player. Obviously not strong enough to really earn a longer term contract at this time. And the fact that he's still young enough that he can still continue developing. Really, he's only had 2 full pro NHL seasons. So I guess they'll keep him around for 1 more year, see how much further he can develop. Obviously, a player like him is a little bit more easy to replace. So we'll see if they can bring out a little bit more of offense out of him and maybe get him to play a full campaign for the coming season and see where things go. But next year, he will be an RFA again, also with arbitration rights. He did have an arbitration hearing scheduled coming up here shortly, but of course, that will no longer be required. Detroit Red Wings have signed restricted free agent forward Dominic Turgeon, who's mostly been a minor league player for them for the past couple of years. He has gotten into a limited amount of NHL games, playing in 9 games over the last 2 years. Of course, this is a 2-way contract, which will pay him $750K at the NHL level, should he get more NHL time. Of course, as time has gone on here, the Red Wings have continued drafting well and have certainly increased their forward depth position with a lot of other younger players that are certainly ranking ahead of Turgeon on their depth chart here. But obviously Turgeon will stick around in the organization for another year and see if he can continue developing. He's done okay at the American Hockey League level, and he's been a pretty decent minor league forward and has had limited opportunity with the Red Wings. So we'll see how things go for this year, but more likely he starts in Grand Rapids, and depending on the situation in Detroit, we'll possibly get a little bit more NHL games, but that's going to be more challenging here as their prospect pool has certainly grown over the last couple of years, and some of those spots might be taken by some other players. The New York Rangers have come to terms with 24-year-old restricted free agent forward Pavel Buchnevich for a 2-year contract at $3.25 million. Of course, he also was a player who had arbitration rights and had a RFA arbitration hearing scheduled coming up here very shortly. Of course, that'll no longer be required here as well. As we talked about in a video yesterday about all the remaining arbitration cases that were scheduled here, we had 10 still left on the schedule, and I said a lot of them likely would end up getting resolved on their own, with probably 1 or 2 more going through the process. And obviously, in cases here of Buchnevich and Stephenson, both of them end up getting resolved here on their own. Now, of course, Buchnevich had a pretty solid year last year, scoring 21 goals, which was a career high, putting up 38 points. 38 points wasn't a career high, but the year before he was slightly more productive on the assist side of things and put up 43 points. So he's had some pretty decent years with the Rangers. The knock on Buchnevich is the consistency right now. He's still learning to be a more consistent everyday player. Obviously, right now, the Rangers have made significant improvements throughout this offseason, adding a lot of other offensive power, including guys like Artemi Panarin. They drafted Capo Caco. I mean, they should be a much better team. They got some other prospects coming up that should make the lineup, like Vitaly Kravtsov. So they're going to be a more offensive team. So that should help a guy like Buchnevich. And taking a look at their forward depth chart on the right side where he normally plays, he very well could slot on the top line with Zibanejad and Panarin. That certainly is a distinct possibility. Of course, they very well might put Caco there as well. Hard to say, but either way, I think Buchnevich is certainly worth keeping around. We have talked about the fact here that the Rangers are going to have to be making some trades, and his name has been mentioned before, but after this signing, I would say more than likely he's going to be staying put. They do have some other options, which we will likely be getting into on our next video, discussing some potential trades that we might see coming up here shortly, so stay tuned for that. But the Rangers are now officially over the salary cap limit. Of course, the Jacob Trouba contract certainly helped a lot with getting them into that cap situation as well, and now with the Buchnevich deal, they end up being $4 million over the cap here between those 2 contracts getting done, and they're not done with their signings either. They still have defenseman Tony DeAngelo and forward Brendan Lemieux, both restricted free agents that need new contracts as well, and of course that's going to push them even further. So we will be seeing some moves out of the Rangers. Certainly interesting to see how they go about becoming cap compliant here before the NHL season gets underway. As I mentioned yesterday, there's still a decent amount of RFA arbitration hearings scheduled coming up here over the next few days into next week. So we very well could see some more signings here over the weekend or into the early part of next week. More likely is a pretty solid possibility. One of the next ones I would probably suspect to see would be Calgary Flames goaltender David Rittich. He's one of the next guys lined up here for an arbitration hearing, and I would think that he and the Flames will probably want to try to avoid that, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a contract announced for him sometime over the next couple of days. So, of course, as always, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on these signings down in the comment section. Let me know what you think of the contracts, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.